Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Wilson, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you. The Morning Majority, 6:30.
It's 7:07 on the Morning Majority. Wilson, Neiman, Ham, all in their place. And, we had a discussion about this, and a lot of people were raising the flag that said, when we shut down the shuttles and the U.S. no longer has the ability to boost mankind into space, to the International Space Station, it'll be okay, they told us, because the Russians will take over. Well, guess what? The Russians had a monumental failure in one of their booster rockets on an unmanned flight, and now they have postponed all manned flights for the moment until they figure out what went wrong. And they're now saying that if they don't get a manned flight up there by, say, the middle of November, it is possible that the International Space Station might have to be abandoned for a while. For more on this, let's turn to astronaut Tom Jones, who's on the line with us now. Tom, of course, is a man who's been on many shuttle flights, and he's also the author of a book called Skywalking. Tom, thanks for joining us.
Morning, Brian.
Well, this seems like a fairly significant development. What do we know about the Russian failure?
Well, that was last Wednesday. They were launching an unmanned cargo freighter called the Progress up to the space station. That happens about 4 times a year. And in the third stage of the ascent, the booster engine suffered a failure. Shut down prematurely, the ship had not made orbit, so it fell back in the atmosphere and was destroyed. The problem is that Soyuz booster that failed has exactly the same third stage as the Soyuz rocket that carries cosmonauts and astronauts to the space station. So the whole fleet of boosters now is grounded until the Russians can investigate the failure. And,
given what we did a similar thing with the shuttle when we had problems, and it just takes a while sometimes, doesn't it?
Exactly, and when Columbia was lost, we grounded the shuttle fleet, and the Russians had their Soyuz rockets to get us to the space station during that 2.5 years while we stood down and investigated and fixed the shuttle. Now the Russians have stood down, but we don't have a leg that can get us up to the space station. And this is the problem with relying completely on the commercial firms in the next few years. NASA has no way to back up the Russians.
Just one more question. I'll pass it on here. But, if the station is abandoned, it can run remotely, but it not as well. Is that the plan? Is that as I understand it?
That's right. The human crew is always supposed to be a part of the station's operation. So if you lose a system on the station and no one is there, a backup can usually be cut in and the station can continue. But if you have a serious failure, like we had with a failed coolant pump a couple of years ago where the astronauts had to replace it outside on a spacewalk, there's no one there to actually meet those critical failures. And you could see the space station crippled or damaged in some way before a crew could get back up there for repairs.
How long can they support a crew that's up there right now?
The supplies aren't a problem, Brian. They can go all the way till March at least without a supply problem. The problem is the shelf life of the Soyuz lifeboats or spacecraft at the space station. There are 2 of them at the station now. The crew's in no danger, but the timing of when they come home is what's the topic now. If they don't come home by November, then returning in the wintertime in Kazakhstan in snow and bitter weather and short landing days, there's very short periods of daylight, could endanger the crew. So they want to have them safely on the ground by November.
What is our relationship with Russia right now? Are we helping them to determine what went wrong with their rocket, or are we just kind of just playing it by ear, just waiting for them to figure it out and taking their word for that they fixed it?
I think you can say that the managers have offered every NASA assistance, but the Russians are fairly proud of their achievements, and they don't usually invite people in to help them side by side. They report the results out, and then NASA will have to bless those results. And there have been problems in the past with the space station and with the old Mir space station, where the Russians have been very close to the vest about how they reveal the results of their investigations. They usually say, everything's fine, we fixed it, here's some information on this, and we're ready to go and launch. And I think in this case, NASA will want to be intimately involved with the results because our people are going to be on these rockets.
As somebody whose life on a daily basis is not really affected by NASA, what capability exactly are we losing? I think a lot of people out there go, well, there won't be anybody in the space station. What am I getting from that interaction normally that we would be losing?
Okay, the space station is a research outpost. 6 people on board operating it and running the experiments on board. So immediately the science goes away when the human crew is not there. There are a few automated experiments that might run in the background. So you lose the science, which is the whole purpose of this investment over the last 15 years or so. And you also lose this place as a test bed for future exploration. There are many systems, for example, for sending astronauts into deep space that can be tested there on the station, and that work will stop, of course, until a crew is put back aboard.
Right.
You've got $100 billion worth of NASA investment over the last 15 years in this machine, and you don't want to risk it because of the lack of transportation.
Now, we're working on some kind of private approach to this right now. Where does that stand?
The commercial firms are being asked by NASA to first launch cargo to prove that their rockets and capsules are safe. Eventually, they can be upgraded to carry humans, is the hope, by around 2015. So we're 4 years away or more from a commercial solution. NASA has also been asked to develop a deep spacecraft that can go beyond the space station, and it's on the back burner, largely. There's not enough budget to bring it along rapidly. And I think that's what needs to change, Brian, is that NASA really needs to say, this is too risky to have only a single way up. We need to really focus on aggressively moving up the schedule for a replacement.
Well, not to put too fine a point on it, but if the Russians really can't figure out what went wrong, or if NASA's not satisfied with their answer, we're sort of hosed as far as our space program on this planet right now, aren't we?
It's a bad place to be in. We've backed ourselves into a corner. Likely, the Russians will figure it out. They've had Russian Soyuz failures before, and within a couple of months, they've actually launched again. So the NASA and international partner plan is to launch a couple of unmanned Soyuzes to show that the fix is in, and we don't know what the fix is yet, but they want to do 2 test flights before they send a crew up, and maybe by the end of November they'll be able to do that. But it's anybody's guess as to how the failure investigation will come along. They haven't even gotten to the wreckage yet out there in Siberia.
We're talking with Tom Jones, astronaut. Before we let you go, I wanted to ask you about this story that's in the AP has out today about airline pilots maybe forgetting how to fly because planes have become so automated these days where you're only in control and liftoff and landing, that they're forgetting how to fly. Is this story a little bit overhyped, or is there some truth to it?
Oh, no, I think there's a lot of truth to it. But pilots now fly in an automated fashion almost right after takeoff to almost until just before landing.
Wow. And
you remember the Air France crash over the South Atlantic a couple of years back. The data recorders were recovered. The pilots were arguing about what to do all the way down to the water until the fatal crash occurred. They were incorrectly pulling back on their controllers and stalling the plane all the way down to the ocean surface. They didn't have a feel for how to fly it manually. It was bad weather, of course, and there were other factors that contributed to their confusion. But their inability to do the right thing, almost the basic thing you do when the aircraft is in a stall from your early private pilot days, was the cause of that accident. And Sully Sullenberger, who landed in the Hudson successfully, was only able to do that because of his extensive manual flying experience in the Air Force before. So what we're losing is this manual feel for how the airplane truly flies, and instead pilots are becoming systems operators.
All right. Tom, well, thank you for weighing in on that. Tom Jones, the name of his book, by the way, it's a great book called Skywalking. We appreciate you joining us here on The Morning Majority.